1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. We're honored to welcome Rwandans, GUQ staff and students as we come together for Kwibuka. Kwibuka means to remember in Kinyarwanda, is to honor more than 1 million lives tragically taken during one of the history's darkest moments. Through Kwibuka's powerful message, remember, unite.
The African Students Association. This is not a speech, this is not a lecture, this is not a poem. It is something I'm calling a piece, as in a piece of writing. And it is titled, "The Class Cannot Be Dismissed. Rwanda is Still Teaching Us." Rwanda's genocide is an unfortunate demonstration of the reality that words have power. They can build and they can destroy. They can unite and they can set asunder. They can heal and they can harm. They can obfuscate and they can clarify. In 1994, genocide in the East African country of Rwanda was unleashed against its Tutsi population. Decades of a section of society being taught to scapegoat Tutsis for every political and economic ill culminated in an orgy of death and destruction that culled thousands upon thousands of people daily from the face of the earth for an identity that had been essentialized and racialized in colonial Rwanda. To this was added the colonial poison of divide and rule that formed long-lasting fissures in society. As Rwanda transitioned to independence, the challenges of national integration that bedevil many an African country, including my own, added themselves to those of national development. Years of dispossession, marginalization, and dehumanization of Tutsis followed, as insidious elements in society tacked onto unfortunate colonial ideologies and superimposed them on post-colonial Rwanda. In 1994, words that over the years had been concocted into powerful ideologies to either via willful neglect during the genocide or adding fuel to the fire, as towards the end, perpetrators of the genocide fled to neighboring territories and established themselves as armed militants with external support, producing an ongoing repercussion of the genocide that has added itself to Rwanda's ethnic troubles of decades past. As such, the class cannot be dismissed. Rwanda is still teaching us. As we gather here today, I would like to take a moment to recall the case that a country which will remain unnamed took another, which will also remain unnamed, to an international forum of justice not too long ago. Yet again, how geopolitical imperatives couched in ideology can be turned into a powerful tool, not only in unleashing lethal force against a group of people, but also in enabling others to distance themselves emotionally and psychologically from the chaos, death, and destruction unleashed upon human beings that for some reason they simply cannot identify with as humans, equal to them, deserving of equal rights and equal treatment in all matters, political, economic, and social. At the same time, ideology enables them to fund and fuel the very chaos, death, and destruction. Thus, the class cannot be dismissed. Rwanda is still teaching us. Now, as a non-Rwandese member of the East African community, what do I think we have to learn from Rwanda today? We have a Rwanda that seeks justice and accountability, not simply as an end to itself, but as a means of enabling the country to mend itself and move on. A Rwanda that memorializes the genocide against the Tutsis, that we may learn from their pain and horror the risks of negative ethnicity that exist in our own societies in different forms. A Rwanda that commemorates the genocide as a constant reminder and as a testament of how horrors and tragedies of scale, can play out in full view of cameras, even today, only for those who had the power to stop it, to position themselves later to ask, how could this happen? Why wasn't it stopped sooner? A Rwanda that has sought to rebuild. A Rwanda that recognized that the task of tossing out policies, institutions, and ideologies that were not fit for the purpose of building a nation could not wait until the country had knit itself together, but had to be a part of the process of reconstruction, and in many instances, construction from scratch. A Rwanda that has and continues to work towards reconciliation in the face of all manner of challenges of national integration, but also external pressures from well-resourced actors of considerable global heft. A Rwanda that is determined to take its memories, the darkness of its genocidal past, and utilize them to crawl out of its destruction, even if at first it had to do so on its belly and on its elbows, and into a better future, a future in which the country knits itself together anew and attempts to forge ahead. Somehow, they are managing.
Proposed to contribute to this event with a reflection around the critical role of memory in fighting genocide denial and how remembering the past helps shape the present and the future of Rwanda. And in that framework, I wanted to propose a few insights to you for a collective reflection as we go through this year's Kwibuka, which is the commemoration period that will run until July this year. So first, I propose that we reflect collectively about memory as a tool of resistance to distortion and denialism, history distortion and genocide denialism. And I will touch more specifically on the role of memorial sites for that very purpose. And understanding memory, the way I understand it, but I'm sure I share that with many of you here, is memory, which is about how individuals or communities remember and internalize past events in their society, while commemoration, Professor Musambu said it very well, is how a society formally acknowledges and honors memory. So there is a saying in Rwanda that says, Kwibuka sukuzura kaboze, which we can translate, commemoration is not about reinstating what was buried. It is rather honoring lives that were lost. Through remembrance, they are rehumanized as we remember their names, lives, and dreams. I would also invite you to reflect about how commemorating the genocide against the Tutsi specifically serves also to validate the survivors' experiences. Publicly commemorating supports the survivors' healing, and more specifically, memorial sites are home for survivors, places where they get to mourn theirs, lay wreaths, speak to them, spending time with them. And we had a very beautiful quote from actually our CEO at the Aegis Trust, who gave his testimony at the national commemoration event on the 2nd of April, and who explained very well how survivors think or feel about commemoration. And he said, through our pain we have found purpose, and through remembrance we have found strength. So this is about how commemoration validates also the survivors' experiences. Commemorating that is also about education. By remembering, we teach about the horrors of hatred, division, indifference, and commemorating becomes then a tool to educate about the dangers of unchecked genocide ideology, the propaganda, the divisions, the hate speech that we hear. If they are unchecked, it definitely brings, takes us to potentially to a genocide. So as Rwanda rebuilds and prospers, new realities kept emerging, calling to adapted solutions, mostly homegrown, but specifically memorial sites are catalysts to creating awareness about those emerging societal issues. Here again, I wanted to share a bit of the experience of the Kigali Genocide Memorial, where the researchers that we engaged in our research grants scheme, one of them once said, where else could these issues be discussed if not at the memorial? It's a place where people get to openly engage with these new realities as the country rebuilds. So at the Kigali Genocide Memorial, we use storytelling, art-based content, applied research, and digital platforms to teach about the history of the genocide against the Tutsi, but also the reconstruction of the country, because we could not tell the story and stop midway. So we receive more than 200,000 visitors a year at the Kigali Genocide Memorial, and it's an opportunity for us to share that story and to educate. So more specifically, we engaged 2,000 teachers, young people, parents, and other community members in what we call peace and values education workshops to invite them to navigate their own wounds and to make sure that they are able to transmit that story to the people that they get to engage with themselves. Commemorating and learning from the past prevents future atrocities. Commemorating encourages vigilance and action against early signs of genocide or mass violence anywhere in the world. It is about the truth, setting the record right. Commemoration reveals a shared humanity between Rwandans and the world. Here, however, it is important to highlight limitations that we are currently facing. Professor Musando just presented it very well with the international community, back in the time, but today as well, and their consequences on how that humanity is at risk to be lost again. And here again, I will cite a journal in Rwanda that wrote something around that truth that needs to be held and to be recorded right. We must be clear, it was the genocide against the Tutsi. Anything less, anything vague or distorted is not just historically inaccurate, it is an affront to the memory of the victims and a blow to the survivors still living with horrible scars 31 years later. It is important to make sure that we have the right vocabulary. As I head to the end of my speech, I wanted also to touch a little bit on the challenges of ensuring that the history of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi is preserved accurately. Memory being fluid and complex, it can differ even among people who lived through the same events, creating multiple narratives, multiple truths about the same experience. This should not, however, be taken as an indication for difference in stories, as the genocide deniers tend to portray. There is one story, and it has to be said the way it is. Second, recrudescence of hate speech globally, with source from the Great Lakes region, currently increases negative messaging about the genocide against the Tutsi. So this opens doors to distortion of the history and to genocide denialism. This fact is impossible to contain because of the implied impunity due to the lack of harmonized legal frameworks in the region, especially to tackle spaces like social media. So this is a challenge that we are facing, not only at the memorial, but as a country in general. And it's part of the reflections I wanted to take to you so that we can collectively keep that in mind as we walk in our personal journeys. Third, we also need to pay attention to ourselves. I just said it's social media, hate speech, a lot of negative messages circulating in that framework, but not only there, everywhere. Our mental health matters. and it's something that really is important at the memorial. We make sure that we keep that in mind as we engage with those unavoidable negative messages, and it's part of the reflection I wanted to take to you. And third, the contemporary realities also we are facing as people in Rwanda, and that I wanted also to propose to you. First being the fact that witnesses, survivors are disappearing. As time goes, we are aging, and people will no longer be there to share their testimonies. It's something we need to work around very urgently. So we need to reinforce testimony collection and suitable and sustainable documentation of those testimonies, especially in that framework of them being really the central to education. Technology and innovation are key, and I will invite you really to create partnerships around that. There is a strong need of research and fact-checking in the midst of profusion of information, including on social media. I would invite you to keep that in mind as well. And then the fact that we need to reconnect with our history, especially for the younger generations that need to engage with it and to accept it the way it is for better youth activism and better action. So I want to conclude expressing an amazed recognition about this Kwibuka 31 event, a very beautiful one for me, a collaboration between actors that play a crucial role in ensuring that the truth remains untouched, namely the academia, Georgetown University, and the civil society through our past initiative. So I want also to salute the important contribution of the government of Rwanda to such events, which is amazing and really bringing to such strong and very appreciated events. So my last words will be inspired by Rwandan proverb that says, "Umwana uzi ubwenge umusiga yinogereza." That is impossible to translate, unfortunately, but it expresses the need for Rwandans to keep the momentum and keep in mind our collective fight for the truth, for memory. We are indeed gifted with an efficient governance and a visionary leadership that opens doors to the reality of a renewal, the very famous Twiyubaka. It is up to us to use it purposefully. Thank you so much for your attention.
The African group of students as well, and all the organizations that took part into organizing this event. I'm thinking about our past, the administration of Georgetown University. I'm always pleased to be joining you during Kwibuka ceremonies here in this particular campus, for reasons that I could spend the whole night explaining. But particularly because today is the last day of the official commemoration period, mourning period, that it coincides with this day here. For me, it is telling of the commitment of this community here to carry forward the message that Kwibuka embodies. Kwibuka, as Mrs. Shenge mentioned, Kwibuka is remembering. And what you're doing here, I wanted to repeat that, is of value to my government, of value to the people of Rwanda, and we can only applaud it. Thought today I won't be very long. It will be really a short word to say thank you, but also thinking of hearing everything that we heard tonight, starting with the theme that you have chosen for tonight. I thought I would mention a few things. First of all, let me say that the peace that we heard earlier was very emotional to me. And I wanted to echo it by saying yes, that the class cannot be dismissed indeed. It cannot be dismissed as Rwandans because we believe that the lessons are still many to be learned. The lessons are still many to be assimilated. And as Rwandans, we know that those lessons are still work to be done for even the Rwandans themselves. The genocide denial curse that we are still dealing with today. For us as a people, we've decided to see it as an uphill battle that we will continuously have to fight. That is a commitment that we've taken. The survival of our society depends on it, right after the genocide. And as I said, it's a commitment that we've taken and will continue to take. It's a lesson that cannot be stopped be learning because we're still seeing it at play today. I think the documentary mentioned it. We're seeing genocide denial at play in the region of East Africa. We're seeing people being still killed just because of that. And we, particularly because of the youth aspect of this commemoration or event tonight, it still is something that we need to push further, particularly in the youth. And I wanted to end by recalling this concept of the banality of evil of Arendt. It always strikes me to see how it is easy for anyone in today's society. I think Shenki mentioned the power of social media. It is easy to deny the genocide against the Tutsi, to deny any genocide in the making. What's happening in the region comes to mind to all of us. It has become easy to take words out of context, to simplify things to their absurd value. And I think as the youth here, youth that are still grappling with these concepts, I think it's important that moments like this commemoration event be an opportunity to take time, dig deep, understand things, because humans' lives are at play. I thought I would be missing an opportunity if I was not going to recall that. The importance of seeing the value of humans' lives in the words, in the posts, in the videos that we receive. These are lives that are at play. We're talking about children, parents, we're talking about people who have dreams that are shattered by just banalizing the evil that is consuming their lives. I thought I would thank you all and keep encouraging you all to remaining deeply humans. Thank you very much.
less or even more than others, right? And now, specifically on the second part of the theme, we're trying to bridge scholarship as academics here in Georgetown, but also grassroots action. And in that order, we have two panelists joining us tonight. The first panelist being Sandra Shinde, who also gave the previous speech. She's a director of programs at Aegis Trust in Rwanda, where she leads initiatives at the intersection of peace building, memorialization, and community development. Now, her work focuses a lot on peace education through storytelling, promoting resilience and reconciliation in post-conflict contexts like Rwanda. She's also very deeply committed to youth empowerment, supporting young peace champions through capacity building and seed funding for community-based initiatives. On the latter part, we have grassroots action. Our second panelist joining us today is Christian Impali, who is the founder and executive director of our PAST initiative, a very famous, might I say, an incredibly impactful youth-led organization in Rwanda, with a mission of educating young Rwandans born after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, or those who were young during that time, about the history of Rwanda. For the past 14 years, our PAST supports genocide survivors with very important work of renovating their houses, give them access to water, electricity, health insurance, and domestic animals to help them become self-sufficient. Our PAST also hosts educational events, with the one that just happened on the 9th of April, hosting over 8,600 young people eager and ready to learn. Join me in welcoming our panelists. I'm sure there's a lot of questions on your mind as well, so we'll keep this as short as engaging as we can, and then let you ask your questions. Now, I'll start with Sandra, who has already given us an inspiring speech and very illuminating speech on her work in memory. And I'll just ask a question that is a bit personal to each one of us here, which is that memory is often seen as something personal. You've said it's perfectly that it's fluid and it's complex. But your work clearly shows that it can be powerful on a national level or even on a global scale. How do you help transform individual and collective memory into concrete action and meaningful social change?
Yeah, thank you so much, Naila. This is quite deep as a question. Individual and collective memory, as I was explaining, really, it is powerful in itself. But I wanted to come back to how we get there. How do we get to confronting our own memories and live with it? And I would say that personal healing enters into the equation, very much so. We need to be able to heal to some extent. People that we engage in those peace and values education workshops I was mentioning are always, they get out of there, most of them, more than 90% of people that we engage, all categories together, talk about how healing, having an open space where they can actually be accompanied as they look at their own background, their own stories, their own lives is helpful in healing. And once you have healed, you are then able to take action. So I'd say that personal healing is very important, but also that it takes personal commitment to change actually and to contribute. So those two things I would say are very much instrumental in doing so, in really creating action out of individual and collective memory.
Thank you so much for that. And now I'll get to invite Christian, who's, like I said, the founder of our PAST initiative. And now I'll just ask you that you founded our PAST initiative to preserve memory at grassroots and action level. What was that one moment that made you realize that this work is necessary?
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here with us today. So that goes back to growing up after the genocide. When the genocide happened, I was very young, and I'm not going to tell you that I remember much about the genocide, but growing up after the genocide was very interesting because, first of all, any family that had two parents had to become a home for the rest of the family that lost parents, kids, and so on and so on. So growing up like that, first of all, I remember growing up with, if I'm not mistaken, 14 kids in a very, very small house. my mom's sister, brother, my dad's young cousins, and 2 sisters, and my siblings. So that raises many questions as a kid. You grow up asking yourself some questions, and some of them don't get the right answers because the parents you're trying to get the answers from, they're also still trying to see how they can heal themselves before they can face that reality and talk about the past and the background and how they survived and so on. So growing up like that made me and my other young friends come up with an idea. We were a group of young people, a dance group back in high school, just having fun, and we thought about something we can do that can make an impact. Being honest with you guys, we didn't know we were going to go in that direction of commemorating but looking among us, we realized that at least 80% of us, as a group of 14, 15 people, had no idea of what our history was, or even interested about learning what our history was. So that's where the idea came from. Not knowing, just being curious to know. And we had a very, very small group of an audience that was following other activities we were doing. And we thought about using that small audience to start something. And we gave ourselves 3 objectives. One was educating ourselves. That was the main goal, the first main goal. Educating ourselves so we can educate other young people. We didn't know how far we were going to go. 2 was encouraging parents to openly talk to their kids, because that's something to this day we are still struggling with. And 3rd one was, how can young people contribute to what the government is doing, to what the private sector is doing, to what the civil society is doing? How can young people add their value to that? How can they play their part in rebuilding our country? So that's where the projects of renovating homes, giving them easy access to water and others came from. So I think that's where the idea, to answer your question, the idea came from just not knowing but being curious was the reason why we started our past.
Thank you so much for the story. It's definitely a story of resilience, and most importantly, it's a story of being proactive in the face of hardships, in the face of a lot of misinformation or the lack thereof. And now that gives us an idea of what post-genocide life looks like on a micro level. But I'll just go back to Sandra on a macro level. You've worked extensively with governments and communities to preserve the history of the genocide. What's one crucial lesson you've learned about what it takes to keep memory alive across generations, especially as we reach to a point where the many young people have no direct connection to these events?
Thank you, Neila. Lessons, I have so many, but let me pick maybe 2 if you allow, not 1, but just 2. First, is about what Christian just shared, building spaces for education and dialogue, allowing people to be able to find the right words to exchange. The Rwandans are mostly defined as people who are very contained, especially for conversations between generations. Plus, when it comes to difficult conversations, it's even worse. And when it comes to the genocide against the Tutsi, you can imagine how difficult it can be. We meet at the memorial, we meet so many people who lack even the vocabulary. How do I explain to my 6-year-old kid what it means to be born out of rape? As a woman survivor who has been raped during the genocide and who had a kid out of it. How do I explain? So creating spaces and platforms for people to exchange and actually empowering them to be able to explain such things is so, so important. And education comes in from the very perspective that Christian was giving. So building spaces and platforms for education and dialogue, I think, is the biggest lesson I've learned. And the second one is research. For the very things I was explaining earlier, we need to set the record right and to be able to fact check whatever comes out of anybody's mouth and mind. So this is the second lesson I'd like to share. I have plenty of more, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think those two lessons really encompass the thoughts of many. And now I'll just go back to the macro level that we talked about earlier. And now, as opposed to Sandra's experience and work, your work happens outside of big institutions. It focuses on everyday people. And what do you think that this kind of action and this kind of movement can do that larger organizations sometimes can't?
Thank you so much. I think we provide a platform that speaks directly to young people. And we use one language that is very understandable and easy, in an easy way, very understandable by the youth, which is art. So we use storytelling, we use poetry, we use music, we use drama, we use testimonies, and we also link them directly during events like our past with local leaders, people who took part in the campaign against the genocide, the liberation struggle of our country, to talk to them and give them first-hand experience, share with them the first-hand experience. So through these channels, it's easier for young people to get an idea of what you're trying to talk about and create spaces for them to go back home and in their community and start asking questions. So that's how we work on this in that framework. Thank you.
I think I can vouch for that as someone that has participated in multiple our past events, that it speaks to you as a person. It speaks to your experiences that you thought you were unique, but really what we've come to see is that there's no unique experience. We're just all living the same life. And now I'll just go back to Sandra and ask, for us as Rwandans, we know what genocide denial means, but maybe for the international community, we hear it, or they hear it as an abstract theory, right? So genocide denial, obviously, we say that over 1 million people lost their lives. How can anyone deny that, right? So they're always like, why do you keep, bringing up these conversations of genocide denial, genocide revisionism? Can we move on? It's been 31 years. We can't move on. And I want to ask Sandra, what specific forms does denial actually take today, right? And why is it particularly dangerous in our current global information environment? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Neila. I won't be going into maybe a legal definition of the denialism itself, but rather proposing maybe a few examples of the forms that it can take. But first of all, just to understand, to explain, and to get it together, we need to understand that genocide denial is the very last phase of any genocidal ideology. So as the perpetrators build up that ideology and put up mechanisms to discriminate, to dehumanize, to create division among people, genocide denial is already integrated, embedded in the very things that are being built up. When Tutsis were called cy'ingenzi, which are cockroaches, he was already preparing to inviting people not to recognize the humanity then. When they kill people and create mass graves of people hiding evidences, this is already preparing to genocide denial. So genocide denial is the last phase of any genocidal project. And coming back to the forms that it can take, I will maybe give examples in the context of the genocide against the Tutsi. And number one is negating the genocide itself, saying that it has never happened. These are stories that are being put up by people, government of Rwanda, people that are inventing those things. It has never happened. This is the first form. A second form I can think of is pretending that Tutsi and Hutu and Twa had shared responsibilities. This is generally related to the 6th of April plane crash, saying that Hutu reacted to Tutsi RPF killing President Habyarimana and calling it shared responsibilities. This is another form. And the most dangerous one to me is around the double genocide theory, where genocide deniers say that they refer to potential revenge by the Rwanda Patriotic Front's army when they have liberated the country and stopped the genocide, pretending that they were revenge, massive revenge on Hutus. This is very complicated because yes, we have had cases, but that were punished and very seriously punished by the RPF. But this is something they built on a theory, and we have so many other, other theories, but that really are embedded underneath these big three I've just shared. It being dangerous in the current information sharing, information-based context we are in, it's something that anybody can understand because we are all exposed. As much as I was talking about fact-checking, for somebody who's not familiar with those spaces of ours, you can be reading an article that is produced using a very serious media channel, which with a certain editorial line, and that looks serious, but that is misleading to you. And that is the danger of it. And that is why we need really to be intentional. Ambassador Marara has shared it. We need to be intentional when it comes to fighting genocide denial. And make sure that we diversify our sources. We make sure that we are reading the right resources, and we are engaging the right people, just to make sure that we set the record right, as I was saying. So very much dangerous.
Thank you for the answer. It contextualizes and I feel like answers the misconceptions that are held by many that the genocide happened 31 years ago and there's nothing more to talk about, because clearly there is, and it is a frightening environment to be in. And now on a personal level, I want to ask Christian that we're in a world of information, but more specifically as young people in a world of social media, right? And misinformation. How do you, or how should one fight back against genocide denial in ways that actually reach people and make them think differently, rather than in a way that's just doing so for the sake of doing so?
Thank you so much. In the world we live in today, where social media is where people get their information, and they also use it on social media for the people on social media, I wanted to talk to my fellow young people in this room today. I want you guys to go out there and educate yourself. We have a few books right there, but those books can be found on the internet, the same way we find other misleading information. So before thinking that, oh, I know they told me that it was a double genocide, or the genocide started because of the president crash, there are a few questions you can ask yourself before I answer the question. How do you explain that one of the richest men in the country helped to order 500,000 machetes right before the genocide. What was the farming project that was going on that needed 500,000 machetes? These are a few questions you need to ask yourself before saying, oh, that's true. It was because the president is playing crushed. This was something that was educated. This was something that was on radios, newspapers, everywhere, in schools, churches. Churches are some of the places that killed many people when you look at the numbers. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that these informations are available to young people. For example, today, if you are here today and you want to learn about the 100 days of the genocide, go on any online platform, stream platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, anywhere. Search for something called Kwibuka podcasts. Listen to it. It explains the 100 days of the genocide, from day one to the last day of the genocide. So these are the informations we want to put out there. Go there and be the ambassadors to end this last stage of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, where people are now denying. When it's not a double genocide, there is the cause, which they say it was on the 6th of April 1994. That's not true. Read the books. I think there is Genocide Archives, Rwanda. There is a digital platform. All these platforms provide information, and we are trying to link the young people, not only just with the old people, but also with the information, because there is a huge gap between the younger and the older generation. That's why we've created something called our past circles, where we are inviting groups of young people from different communities, and also invite elders in different communities, genocide survivors, genocide perpetrators, and anyone who knows something about our history, to talk to these young people and educate them about what our past was before the genocide and how we can build it in the world of today, where genocide denial it's the most threatening stage of what happened in 1994. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As I come to the end of my questions, before we get the audience, you've delved a bit into my next question, which is, we're joined here today by people that are not Rwandans. What would be a one-liner or a one simple message to them regarding the world that we're in today, regarding confronting genocide ideology, and in general, regarding that peace is our choice? What would you say to them?
Thank you so much, Neila. Confronting, I said it, humanity is, we have a shared humanity, and Professor Musantu said it very well in her introductory remarks. It is not up to me, just because I'm Rwandan, to confront genocide ideology. It is up to me as a human, actually, and I think this is the key line to understand. It's not because today Rwandans, Tutsi population in the Great Lakes region, and the East African community are concerned by, let's say, the hate speech that is re-emerging, that it's only up to them to fight it and to confront that ideology. It's really up to us as human beings, and we all need to feel concerned about that and to fight along the way with our brothers and sisters. So to me, really the key message is, it is up to us as humans to do the right thing, if peace is our choice, as you're saying, Neila.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I'll make it as short as the question sounded, but don't let the genocide deniers make you look like a fool. Yeah? To the beautiful young people of EC, you spend so much time here that when someone comes to you and they tell you lies and you accept them, you are wasting your time in this beautiful community. Because you have internet in your hands, you can educate yourself to what is going on and make your judgment. So go out there and don't become fools in front of the genocide deniers. Thank you.
Very powerful last message. If I can welcome any questions from the audience, any remarks, any thoughts? Was it that good? There's no way. Okay. We have one question. Sorry, we're gonna give you the mic. Sorry. Okay.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I want to thank the government and everyone who has organized this. And I've recognized something. I'm a Ugandan, my name is Isaac. And when we are in Uganda, we see people doing this. I've never taken chance to attend on one of a kind. So I tried so much to reach here, but I realized that yes, people have pain in their hearts, and the only way to avoid this pain to happen to the coming generation is by this commemoration, people knowing that it's dangerous, it's really dangerous. It's now I know the dangers of the genocide, right from the words that have been spoken here. And I want to say something that the people who are trying to cover up, the people who are trying to manipulate and to change the meaning, to change the information, yes, there will be to be, but if we continue with these activities, theirs will fade, and the truth will remain. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad some of us have heard something from the event. I'm welcoming more thoughts, more questions. There's a question in the back? Okay, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Manzi Kenzo, and my question is, when it comes to classifying what is true and what is not true from an international perspective, because information has been written by Rwandans, that is true and that is not true. So how do I separate the truth from what is not true in terms of genocide denial? Thank you.
I think it's a question to both. Please don't even start.
So, if today you look at the internet, or if you look in that corner right there, we have a few books of genocide survivors. People to this day, if you watch the interviews and the videos like the one you just watched, you experience the pain of the people who lost all their loved ones. And then you wake up the next morning, you listen to some of the people who are the architects of what happened in Rwanda in 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Some of them, they are still on the run since the genocide. Others have been convicted. Others have been found guilty of what they did, but not yet in jail because of the involvement of different international communities and the politics behind it and so on and so on. So we should be able to, as the people who are lucky enough to be in to have such education, we should be able to judge, to use our judgment and make decisions of who we can trust in the two. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isaac, for the question. I was actually thinking about it, coming to a university for such conversation. And I was thinking, as students, we all have been exposed to diversified sources of information. And for writing an essay, you don't rely on Wikipedia and expect to be taken seriously, right? So I think diversifying the sources of information is one thing I would recommend, right? But also looking at the reliability of the resources that you have access to, right? So if it is a journal that publishes, I was talking about editorial lines. We know, for instance, in from European countries mostly, Belgium, France, the UK, but also in the US, we have been having a lot of deniers being published, being given platforms actually to spread their messages. And we know through which channels, because that journal would have an editorial line or would have their head of, I don't know, whatever department, who is biased and is promoting such kind of messaging. And these are things that are known. So diversifying sources of information is something I think is very important. And so looking at the reliability of what you are accessing as resource and making your way out of it, as we do for when we are at school actually. We always look for the most reliable information and based on it to do our exams. So yeah, these two would be tips to share.
I think we have time for one more question, if any. Okay, yeah, we have a question.
Hello? Oh, sorry, Abed. Hi, my name is Esther, and I have just a small question. I'm a communications major, and as that, I could be said to have a pretty good understanding of social media and stuff. We've seen over the past few years, things become a trend, you talk about a little bit of information coming from Rwanda, and it's either, Rwanda this, Rwanda that. Things tend to become a trend really fast, and information just fades, so fast. And when we're talking about this kind of education, it's not the kind of thing that you just say in one word, you're not about to go and say, oh, deniers are gonna get you like this, because there is a lot of ways they can say things in very educated manners. And so my question is, how do we make sure that we give out a message that sticks, a message that is not just a trend, not just something that is so clickbaity that people are going to listen to what you're saying and move on super fast, because people get their information from the people they consort with. So if I'm listening to Rwandan speaking, maybe I'm going to want to learn a little bit more, but if I'm listening to deniers, maybe I'm going to get the wrong information, just move on from there and make my mind from there. So how can we try to make information stick a little bit more?
Would you like me to start so that we can expand? Because I'm sure you have more to say about that. Yeah, but mine is about just actually confirming that it's a job. I'm not a communication person like you are, but it's a job and we need to be intentional in making it stick and do it professionally, actually. And just sharing the experience of the Genocide Archives of Rwanda.rw, which is our documentation platform, the memorial, where we do showcase all the factual information that we collect, including testimonies, including books, including whatever, plenty of things. I invite you to go and check. So what we try to do is to create a community around it and to keep engaging those people. So whenever we have something new coming up in a given section, being a new research, a new book, we've supported publishing, for instance, anything new coming up, we try to keep engaging people, inviting them to come back. And yeah, there is something new, come and check. And of course, online platforms are very key. It's more accessible and all, but the physical ones, I wouldn't miss on those ones as well. So the very seminars, such kind of events, when we invite people to engage with a new research, a new book, a new stuff in a seminar setting, for instance. So both online and physical, community engagement is very, very key to me, to us, in our practice at the Memorial. So I think, yeah, these are ways we can think of.
I think it's what you just mentioned. There is listening to testimonies. If you're sitting here listening to testimonies, but if we can manage to document the testimony either in writings or in a digital way, that's why we are trying to also approach some of the experts to see how we can now start collecting testimonies from survivors, from perpetrators, from the elders, some of them who fled in 59, to start sharing their stories, but using a platform where, as you say, it can stick. So the majority of our community, the people we talk to, the young people, we reach out to them through social media. So we are trying to use the same platforms to make sure that these stories stays as long as possible. So that's how we are trying to do it. Maybe we'll have a chance to listen to what you can advise on how we can maybe improve it. So yeah, thank you.
This has just led us to the end of the panel today. And I guess if there's one thing I could take out of all of this, is going back to the very first welcome speech, that clearly the class cannot be dismissed. I think Professor Musando has left an indelible mark on all of us, with their words, and her call to action as well. And I think the panelists have only done even more so to that, giving us better insights into their professional life, their personal life, and how we can all come together really to fight genocide ideology. It's a real threat. We now understand that, but we also see that there's a lot of strength within us to fight all of that. And I'll just give the floor back to the MC to conclude, and thank you so much.
A huge thanks to our panelists for sharing a very powerful message, and to all of you who asked questions. Your curiosity and energy is what really brought this conversation to life. So my key takeaway from this panel is the reminder that confronting genocide ideology requires courage and action rooted in our communities. Basically, bridging lived experience with grassroots efforts is how we honor the truth, fight against deniers, and keep the memory alive with purpose. So as we come to the close of today's program, I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you for coming. Special thanks to our distinguished guests, the Embassy of Rwanda in Qatar, our past initiative, GUQ events team, library, and African Student Association for helping us to organize this event. Together we continue the important work of learning, educating, and standing against hatred, division, and the ideology of genocide wherever it may rise. Please feel free to stick around and enjoy some light refreshment in the back and a chance to keep networking and connect further. Thank you so much.